The first night I found the handprint on the outside of the lantern room glass, I told myself it was a seabird. A gull, maybe. Something with a torn wing, desperate enough to slap the pane and slide off. I even laughed. A short, dry sound that didn't echo right in all that curved metal and glass. I wiped it down with a rag and didn't look at the shape of the fingers again. That was my first mistake. The second was not checking the logbook. The supply boat was due on a Tuesday. Every Tuesday, for 6 years, without fail. The Marianne, out of the mainland, with diesel fuel, tinned meat, powdered milk, and whatever book I'd circled on the order form 3 weeks prior. I kept the radio schedule religiously. I liked the crackle of the operator's voice, the confirmation of a world beyond the reef. Tuesday came and went. No engine drone on the horizon. No white hull cutting the gray chop. I told myself weather. A squall. A mechanical hiccup. The Marianne was a sturdy old tug. She'd limp in on a Wednesday, maybe Thursday, with a sheepish captain and a story about a fouled propeller. I waited. I polished the great Fresnel lens until my knuckles ached. I painted the rust spots on the gallery railing. I counted the tinned beans. By Friday, the radio was just static on the scheduled frequency. A hiss like sand pouring into a hollow skull. I tried the emergency channel. Nothing. I tried the ship-to-ship. Nothing. The silence had a weight. It pressed against the thick granite walls of the tower and made the lamp's rotation sound like a grinding tooth. That was the first week. The second Tuesday passed. Then the third. The food was fine. I was fine. The light was my only duty. From dusk to dawn, the beam must sweep. Unbroken. A solid arc of warning. Ships depended on it. I kept the rhythm. Clockwork and kerosene. But the nights grew longer. And the sounds from the rocks below changed. It started with a scraping. Not the constant gnaw of wave and stone, but something deliberate. A slow, gritty drag, like a heavy sack being hauled up a slope. It would begin around 2 in the morning, when the fog rolled in and turned the beam into a solid wall of white. I'd stand at the gallery, listening. The sound would stop if I leaned over the rail. Start again when I retreated. A game. I set up a camera. The old Polaroid, the one I used for logging unusual weather. I aimed it at the base of the cliff, set the timer for a long exposure. The flash was a weak, dying star. The picture developed in a chemical blur. Black water. Black rock. And a shape. Low. Broad. Like a wet boulder that had decided to breathe. I told myself it was a seal. A bull-elephant seal, massive and stupid, hauling out. They do that. They flop. They rest. But seals don't leave handprints. The next night, the scraping was closer. I could hear a new sound within it. A wet, labored rhythm. Not breathing. Breathing is involuntary. This was a choice. A conscious effort to pull air into something that didn't want it. I shone the service light down the tower's side. The beam caught the slick, dark granite. Empty. But the wet outline of a trail remained. A glistening path, leading from the waterline to a point 20 feet below the gallery. It evaporated in the salt air by dawn. I stopped sleeping during the day. The dread was a physical thing, a cold stone in my gut. I checked the logbook. My own entries from the past weeks looked like the writing of a stranger. Asterisk light operational. Weather clear. No contact, asterisk the words were lies. The weather was never clear. The contact was constant, and it was climbing. I found more marks. Not handprints. Scratches. Deep, parallel grooves in the mortar between the stones, as if someone had dragged a set of hooked nails upward. They were fresh. The dust was still loose. I mixed a bucket of cement and filled them in. By the next night, they were empty again. Cleaned out. Not filled. Emptied, the thing was taking the cement. Consuming it. I heard the scraping at the level of the fuel storage room now. The thick iron door vibrated in its frame. A fine black dust sifted from the hinges. I braced it with a timber. The timber splintered by morning. The radio died completely. Not just static. A dead, electronic hum. The batteries bled dry. I had no way to call out. No way to hear a human voice. The Marianne was a ghost story now. I was alone with the light and the dark and the thing that was learning the shape of my home. I began to talk to the lens. To the clockwork. You have to keep the light turning. That's the rule. The only rule. If the light stops, ships die. Men drown. I could hear them sometimes, out in the fog. Not voices. A collective gasp. A held breath. The beam would cut through the murk, and for a second, I'd see them. Not faces. Impressions. Pale, upturned smudges in the mist, like the afterimage of a flash. They were waiting. For the light to fail. For me to fail. The thing on the rocks was their herald. Their scout. It was almost at the gallery now. I could smell it. Not rot. Not fish. A deep, mineral odor. Like wet clay and old copper. The air grew heavy with it. One night, during the 4 a.m. watch, I heard a new sound. A tap. Delicate. Insistent. At the base of the lantern room door. The one that led out to the external maintenance catwalk. Tap. Tap tap. A code. A request. My hand was on the latch before I caught myself. The cold metal burned my palm. The tapping stopped. A long, sliding silence. Then, a pressure. The door bowed inward, just slightly, as if something immense was leaning against it. Testing. The hinges groaned. I threw my whole weight back, braced a chair under the handle. The pressure held for a full minute. Then, a release. And the scraping resumed. Faster now. Hungry. I was out of cement. Out of timber. I had only the light. And my voice. I started to narrate. To fill the silence. The beam completes a revolution every 15 seconds. It is visible for 22 nautical miles in clear weather. The mechanism is brass, manufactured in 1897. It has never failed. I recited the maintenance logs. The supply lists. The names of every keeper who had lived in this stone throat before me. Their signatures. Their dates. I was building a wall of words. A history. A claim. This was my place. My rhythm. The thing outside did not belong. It did not have a name in the logbook. It did not have a signature. The tapping came again. Not at the door this time. At the glass. High up. In the lantern room. A single, sharp crack near the apex of the dome. I looked up. A hairline fracture, thin as a spider's silk, ran from the bolt to the pane. It was not from impact. It was from pressure. From something pressing against the glass from the outside. The catwalk was narrow. A man could barely stand on it. But something was out there. Crouched. Leaning. Its weight making the iron scream. I did not look. I kept my eyes on the lens. On the turning. The fracture spread. A slow, creeping web. The air whistled through it. The smell of wet clay filled the room. The beam caught the crack, and for a moment, the light refracted. Split. A second, fainter beam shot out into the fog. A false star. A lie. The ships would see two lights now. They would be confused. They would come closer. The thing was breaking my light. Corrupting my purpose. That was the worst night. The night I understood. It wasn't trying to get in to kill me. It was trying to get in to turn me off. To let the light die. To open the door for the waiting shapes in the fog. I was not the victim. I was the lock. And it was picking me. I did not sleep. I watched the fracture. It stopped growing at dawn. The pressure eased. The scraping retreated down the rocks. A retreat. Not a defeat. It was learning my patterns. It knew when I was weakest. The food was low. The kerosene was lower. I began to ration the light. To let it dim between sweeps. A sin. A betrayal of every man at sea. But I needed it to last. I needed to see the next Tuesday. The next Tuesday that would never come. I started to see it in the beam itself. A distortion. A thickening in the light, halfway out to the horizon. As if the fog had grown teeth. I'd swing the beam, and for a fraction of a second, the darkness would swing back. A counter-rotation. A shadow cast by nothing. I talked louder. I shouted the logs. I sang hymns my mother taught me, off-key and desperate. The thing outside began to mimic me. Not my voice. My rhythm. The scraping matched the clockwork. Tap tap tap. A perfect, horrible syncopation. It was learning the language of the light. It was becoming part of the mechanism. The final Tuesday. The day the Marianne was 4 weeks overdue. I had 1 can of beans. A cup of diesel. The fracture in the glass was a frozen lightning bolt. The air was thin. The pressure on the door was constant now. A low, patient hum. I made my last entry in the log. Asterisk light operational. Keeper, asterisk I stopped. The word, alive, felt like a boast. A challenge. I wrote, keeper present. I climbed to the lantern room for the last watch. The sea was black glass. No wind. No waves. A perfect, held breath. The beam cut a clean, empty arc. For the first time in weeks, I saw nothing in it. No smudges. No shapes. A clean, honest light. I almost wept. Then I saw the waterline. It was wrong. It was too high. Not a tide. The sea was bulging. A great, dark dome rising from the center of the reef. As I watched, it broke the surface. Not water. A back. A vast, slick, black back, shedding seawater in waterfalls. It was the island. The thing I'd been living on for 6 years. The rocks. The tower. It was all a part of it. A shell. A lure. The light was not a warning. It was a dinner bell. And I had been ringing it, faithfully, every night, for years. The tower shuddered. The granite blocks ground together. The great lens wobbled on its track. The beam stuttered. I lunged for the mechanism. My hands found the cold brass. I forced it to turn. To complete its arc. The light swept over the rising thing. Over the canyon of its opening maw, ringed with knot teeth, with barnacles and shipwrecks and the bones of the Marianne. It did not flinch. It was coming home. The door below exploded inward. Not with a crash. With a wet, tearing sound. The smell of clay and copper and deep, salted hunger flooded the stairwell. The tapping was inside now. On the walls. All around. The tower was waking up. And I was the only moving thing that did not belong. I held the light. I kept it turning. My hands bled on the gears. The beam swept. Once. Twice. A third time. On the fourth, the glass shattered. The thing poured in. A wave of cold, intelligent darkness. It did not touch me. It flowed around me, toward the light. Toward the heart of the mechanism. It embraced the brass. And the light changed. It was no longer a warning. It was a welcome. A beacon. The ships would come now. Drawn to the new, strange pulse. The thing had not climbed the rocks. It had simply stood up. And I was still here. In the belly of the light. Watching it turn. Watching it call. My duty is the light. The light is no longer mine. If you hear a new rhythm in the old beam, a syncopation in the sweep, do not follow it. Do not come to the island. The keeper is present. The keeper is waiting. The keeper is part of the mechanism now. And the light is hungry. Subscribe. If you dare. For more stories from the dark.